Well, hello everybody. John here, JP. I'm here back for the final day of NAB. Show's going to wrap up today. There may be a few other things going on. So I'm live on my YouTube channel as well. I want to thank again Epiphan for helping sponsor this time. Get a little bit of a way we can contribute and kind of give you a behind the scenes of what's going on. So today I've got Nick from Epiphan. So Nick and I are going to chat about, well, one, kind of the announcement that you guys made this week. You had several items you guys were covering.
Yeah, well, the big announcement was really the addition of Zoom to our world-class set of hybrid tools called Epiphan Connect.
Yep.
And it's it was an exciting part to show how we can make even more accessible video available to everybody in all walks. And so that was a lot of fun to roll that out.
And I think, that's encouraging to see kind of the progression of the technology from when you guys announced with Connect initial with Microsoft Teams and now adding Zoom. We kind of continue this evolution of this process of how the technology is developing and getting better. And certainly a lot of people are leveraging that to support their digital events now, looking at different options.
Well, and that's it. It's about accessibility. It's about meeting people where they are. And then one of the things about this industry that I've only been at this show for 2 years now, out of the 100, there's definitely a barrier for most folks, right? If you wanted to create an event, it's really challenging historically to do that. So that becomes a barrier. People don't want to. They think to themselves, I'll save that for the next one. I don't want to do it this time. And the truth is that enriching that experience, engaging with your customers, whether that's internal or external folks in a more meaningful, polished way, that really helps to enhance that story. And as we describe, it makes every video an experience, And the addition of Zoom along with Microsoft Teams means that every Zoom room and every Microsoft Teams room in the world is effectively a little mini studio, right?
Right.
Good video, good audio, good internet, like the heartburn of any video producer's life.
Totally. Nothing's worse than having the other experience, which is not great, right?
Yeah.
Which is really that kind of frustrates people from a complexity component of the process, right? And they get kind of they feel a little bit of disillusionment of the effort, and then they're leery about using these different platforms. Yeah. And so now with what you guys are doing around that, it's really kind of providing a more seamless experience and making sure and saying it's not as complex as it looks, right?
Yeah.
And you can extend the reach your audience and do that.
Well, so a smart fan once said to me, one of the dirty truths about the technology world is that where there's mystery, there's margin. And I think that's the disruption that Epiphan's making in this marketplace. Is we're saying, no, these are approachable tools. If you're a church, if you're a small business, if you're an individual that wants to create these events, a Pearl Mini at $3,500 is an all-in-one kind of little mini studio.
Yeah.
And now when you want to bring in somebody that's not on site, we make it easy with Epiphan Connect. Whether that person off-site is familiar with Zoom or Teams, it doesn't matter. We're going to let you seamlessly bring them into your production and effectively turn those video conferencing tools into your green room. And that's a really interesting shift in the dynamics, which allow us to really have these effective events without all kind of the anxiety and stress that we used to have to fake in order to get through it. Yeah. And let's be honest, we've all been faking it for years.
Yeah. Yeah, no, and that's it. Yeah, there's always we all say kind of behind the scenes, back of stages, there's the crazy going on, right?
Yeah, and we want to hide that.
Yeah.
And that's the beauty of it. I once had a chance, I was in the Air Force, I once had a chance to take some pilot's lessons, and one of the things that my trainer said to me is the best pilots, they don't let you know that they're actually flying the plane. It just feels seamless. You just want the people to just enjoy the ride.
Absolutely.
And I think that's a lot to do with the producers. And the other thing to appreciate is that the producers, as we found, folks like yourself, it's almost like that sense of you're under a guillotine.
Yeah.
If something goes wrong, that thing drops, and that's a real, there's an emotion to that. Totally. And so not only are our tools designed to make it easy on the people that are participating and joining, but we arm you with things like statistics and data about how the tool's performing.
Absolutely.
We remove the dependency on the local network that NDI and some of the existing solutions would require.
Right.
This is purely cloud to cloud. So, and as you've seen us do sometimes, JP, we don't even touch an actual encoder, right? We just do it all virtually.
No, and I think that's kind of the neat part about with the Epiphan, with the technology in terms of Epiphan Cloud, right, is being able to have the units deployed in the field, go into the cloud, pair it up. I've done this with several clients. It's pretty seamless, right? And once it's established, you can get all of the analytics, all the data, right? You can do a recording, you can start the live stream. And you can actually admin into the box, which is very useful.
Very useful.
From an online video specialist, webcast producer, right? A lot of times we're having to go out and validate the technology, make sure behind the scenes things are ready to good to go, right?
Well, I think it's why we see, the smartest live event folks and the biggest live event folks really relying on these edge devices. It's something that during the event yesterday with Andy, he actually highlighted, and it's nice when other folks kind of like see that from the outside. And Andy Carluccio has a long history of doing events, and he said, one of our superpowers is that ability to have these smart edge devices. And people look at me and I go, what makes it smart, right? And they go, what? And I go, the smart people stay at home.
Yep.
Now, again, if it's a church or if it's a business or if it's a client, that means that you can deploy that hardware, configure everything from the cloud, and then also produce the event from the cloud. So if the volunteer, running the simple touchscreen and pushing the buttons gets frustrated, cool, it's really easy for us to reach in and help, or for you as a service provider to go and reach in. And I think there's a lot of power there in changing the way we think about video experiences and try to elevate those experiences beyond video conferencing without the friction and costs associated with historical live events, broadcast type things.
No,
because that's been a barrier for customers. They think to themselves, I'm going to skip it this time because it's too much money. We got to change that mentality. This is all accessible.
I think that has been the cost, the barrier has been the cost, right? And so the disruptive nature of where things are going, especially over the past 2 years, right? And as things mature in the space, obviously what you guys are doing and what FFN's bringing to the table now becomes the cost is, and I tell a lot of times for a lot of folks, I said, listen, it's not as expensive as you think it is, right?
Yeah.
You're on you pay as you go model, right?
Yeah.
You use it when you need it, and then you can let it sit there, and then develop your production.
Absolutely.
But you have elements in place to have it ready to go, right? So when you need to do it, and I think that's kind of the exciting part of the disruptiveness of the technology. Kind of taking that into NAB now, thinking about where NAB this year being the 100th anniversary, a lot of vendors. I just got a note last night from the NAB folks saying there's like 65,000 people that were here in the preliminary reports and over 1,100 vendors. From your perspective with the show, and you guys, FFN's done several NAB events, and you have a background in the broadcast industry and everything. So maybe what has been your perspective from the show, right, in terms of what you're seeing and the changes that are happening, especially now that everybody's back on site?
Well, I think the changes, and I see this both at NAB and then in the Pro AV space in Infocom and ISE, the innovation is all happening with companies like us.
Great.
The stalwarts, the people that have the biggest booths, are the people doing the least innovation. They're continuing to try to put you into a walled garden. They're trying to continue to say, oh yeah, we can do that. Let me show you how we custom design this thing. Well, that's fantastic until the realities of life, the variability of life shows up, and we want tools that are really universal and easy to mix and match and can be flexible with us. That's again why I think we see the most progressive clients starting to move towards us, and that our types of, our skill sets are designed to work with everybody, but also work standalone. And there's a lot of elements to that I think we're very proud of as a company, that we've taken this kind of elevated approach of universality and service to folks like yourself, and then ultimately in service to your end customers who want to tell their story in a meaningful way in a video-first society.
Right.
People don't read anymore. They watch videos, right? The only thing people are reading is when the whatchamacallits are running across the bottom of the video.
Yeah, a little ticker.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes, which is infamous because everybody watched that used to be one of the things back in the day with CNN and everything else, right? Like they would watch the headline updates, right? The tickers would show up. But people do the attention in terms of how people view and kind of get engaged as a certain element of video in a production, live stream, however they're watching it, is different. It's changing. And we saw that during, I think that to your point, with COVID. With Hub Entertainment Research and others out there in the space that kind of collect the numbers like Nielsen does, and where people were viewing the content, where do they go to, right? How do they interact? Is it through a device, their mobile phone, tablet, smart TVs, right? And then obviously from a corporate and other organizations and churches and house of worship, we're delivering it to websites and other locations. So I think you're right. There's this kind of progression, and then I think I love where you're talking about there's the physical element and always has been in terms of building everything out. But I think like having the conversation with Brian Blackmore for Church Production Magazine yesterday, where he talked about a lot of the new churches that the churches that are building their new building locations are now factoring in studios and different ways of how they're going to ingest that and contribute that. And I think that's a powerful statement of how we're seeing that progression happen. But we're also seeing that in the corporate world where you have these virtual studios, micro studios. So there's a variety of different elements in the digital world, right, of how you connect people through video and do that.
Well, one of our brand promises is make every space a studio. So in the corporate
Yeah.
side, if you've invested in Zoom rooms or Teams rooms, those effectively become studios.
Right.
And I'll also just say for your folks that are listening, like, when we talk about new construction and building a studio, that sounds very intimidating. $3,500 for a Pearl Mini with the gear you got in the back of the church.
Yep.
And what you can do is not only produce your live stream, but then also take the HDMI out and feed it into your overflow space for Easter Sunday.
Yep.
When you got folks sitting in the
Yep.
the multi room.
Yeah.
And then it allows you to create this experience that your volunteers can actually run. And the proof point on that is nobody better than myself, John. 2 years ago when I interviewed with Epiphan, I set up an event for my wife, who's an occupational therapist that specializes in special needs kids. She wanted to do an infant massage course online. Well, the challenge with that traditionally is that if my camera angle's only like this,
Right.
really hard for a mother that's stressed out or a father that's stressed out in those early days of parenthood to try to translate those movements of your child.
Yeah.
So I did something simple. I got the Pearl Mini, I took a USB camera in front, a USB camera at a 45-degree angle, and I put my Nikon SLR over the shoulder. And then I did some layouts with her Sprout and Thrive logo, and I had it all set up within 2 hours. Of course, she didn't want me in the room because I was going to make her nervous, which was fine. I sat on the couch, I drank a beer, and I switched the event via my iPad. And this means that like volunteers and in those other scenarios, they could be at home and producing and switching those events. They don't even have to be on site.
Yeah.
And that starts to really change the dynamics of how we make this approachable and easy for everybody.
Yeah.
And again, it doesn't need to be this big elaborate thing. This is something that we're trying to, make it simple, make it accessible. We call it, broadcast without barriers.
No, and I think that's key, because if we think about that, it becomes a building block on the overall solution that we're trying to develop, and right. So if it's a digital only event and taking like with the experience with your wife and what she's trying to do at a location at home, and you're managing that part and contributing as part of that production, I think that's key. And I think that's kind of, it's kind of hits across a lot of different industries, right? If we think about from churches to healthcare to a variety, and we're seeing more of this and seeing more people and then I think the big thing from the show that I've heard several times is like, okay, we've got this content, we need to manage it, but we also need this element of making sure that we can deliver streams, we need to do it, right? And to be able to pivot. And I think that was the big kind of aha moment from COVID that I had, was being able to pivot quickly, right? And be able to
Which
distribute.
flexible architecture becomes really important.
That's key.
And that's the thing that's cool about our system, is they're all designed to work together in a very intelligent way, right? That cloud deployment, those local devices that are smart, complemented with Zoom or Teams. But we also have set these solutions up so they work with everybody else.
Yeah.
We work with, if you have integrations in your office space with Crestron, Extron, QSys. If you're a higher education institution, you want to work with Panopto, Kaltura, Yuja. We recently added NDI-HX free of charge to our existing devices. So if you're an Epiphan, you got a free upgrade to NDI-HX. Because our devices are intelligent. That's part of the brand promise.
Right.
It's part of the reason why we don't come out every year and try to sell you a new piece of hardware. You don't need it.
Yeah.
Right? We've created an architecture that gives us the ability to continue to redistribute where those functions and features exist. And that's something we'll continue to do. We're allowing media playback as a new thing. So you can actually store 4K media in the device and inject that as a layout into your show. So I know, in House of Worship as an example, a lot of times they're doing pre-production of, maybe that's a segment of their overall sermon on a Sunday. Well, now we can inject that right in there with just a layout, touch of a button. In the corporate world, as a marketer, we go and build these beautiful 4K videos, and then we screen share them through Zoom and Teams, and they come through at 3 frames per second. Looks miserable on there. Those are the ways that we're starting to, again, look at how we make this all work in service to us and in service to our constituents. Because the goal is to use video to differentiate your brand. And that's the important aspect. There is a sea of information out there. How do we rise above it in an affordable way that's not intimidating?
Yeah, I think that's great. So, well, obviously people can go to the Epiphan website and catch up on the announcement that's made yesterday. You had talking with Zoom and kind of the major announcement there. And also catch up on some of the other webinars and other information to learn more about kind of what we've talked a little bit about. And so I'm excited to kind of see where you guys are going, because I think you're right. I mean, there's an element here on the return feed. People will say, well, can we get a return feed in-house, right? And bring that feed in. with bringing guests in remotely, especially through Zoom or Teams, right, and being able to pin that as part of the production, and then redistribute that in-house is another area of the flexibility of the software as you're kind of going towards.
Absolutely, absolutely. And it's all about making it, again, easy on those volunteers that are in the space. They don't
Yeah.
have to worry about pinup farms and trying to, oh gosh, somebody shared content or somebody else joined the call. No, 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 no. These are all isolated video feeds in HD with isolated audio.
Yeah.
And the really cool part, John, is that if you have an Epiphan Pearl Mini as your kind of standard production tool, you can literally select the Zoom participant or the Teams participant as a feed into your input. So once everything's set up with your layouts, you're just simply assigning them to that guest slot. And one of the things I was really proud of the team yesterday that we did is with a very, very light crew. You know, Dan Wallace right now is in the background making us look really
Right.
good. Dan's in Ottawa, Canada, by the way.
That's right.
Right, for your viewers, there's nobody here switching this. We're in a shoebox of a studio. I mean, I could
Yeah.
practically touch JP right now if I wanted to, but we're really showing people that this is possible.
Yeah.
On trade show internet,
Yeah.
with less than probably 10 grand worth of gear, we're creating a high quality broadcast with
Absolutely.
a producer that's, 5,000 kilometers away.
Yeah.
That's cool.
It's
That's
really
the future.
cool. That is the future. And I think this is a good example, and I'm anxious to share this after we were to people to see this, because I think what Nick's hitting on is kind of that area of what we're talking about is, you don't have to have a major infrastructure to be able to deliver it, right? And those of us like Dan and those of us that do cloud productions or remote productions, it's really making our jobs a little bit easier because we can manage it in different ways and doing that.
Sorry.
No, go for it.
Well, I was just going to say one other thing. In the story about my wife with that video, the other thing we did is recorded the isolated views. We sent it to a producer afterwards who made an on-demand video, and then we transferred that into a on-demand course that somebody can go and watch at their own time.
So you can repurpose it.
So you can repurpose that content.
Yeah.
And this is also really important, that we need to extend the tail of this content. So, we're here, we're having this conversation. Those of you that are joining us live, thank you, that's great.
Right.
But there's a whole host of other people that will value for this information, but they need to watch it later. And so we give you that ability to not only take and make a great live show where you make interactive with guests, but then also record for on-demand content. And I think that really helps to understand that we're meeting people where they're at and their journey, and we're being empathetic to their time and helping to ultimately get them the information in the format and the space that they're open to it.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, Nick, thank you for sharing a little bit about this. I think it's been fantastic. First, I wanted to kind of, and thank for everybody, to Nick's point, for joining us live. And I think this is great to kind of give everybody kind of a behind the scenes, a little bit of what's happening here at the show. I'm excited about what you guys are doing and where it's going, and kind of the investment in the technology front in terms of the flexibility of the architecture that we've been discussing. So if you want to learn more about what Epiphan's platform and products, go to their website. We'll be sharing this video, repurposing the content. And is there anything that we should share with the audience in terms of learning more from this event that you would like to communicate with them on, as far as what you've talked about this week? Or?
Well, I just encourage your viewers to really, again, look at this as an approachable solution and understand that we're here.
Yeah.
That we're humans, that we're testing these boundaries, we're learning as well, and we're here to share that information and make everybody collectively better together. And that I just encourage them to reach out, check out the assets that we've created, the different examples, and if they have questions, reach out, and our world-class support team's here to help.
Awesome. Thank you, Nick. Thank you, everybody, for joining with us. Thank you for joining with the show here at NAB. Appreciate Dan's help. It's been a great show here. Hopefully you'll see some other videos on the interwebs of sort, right? Then they'll be made available. You can go check them all out, and that'll be fantastic. So if you have any questions, maybe leave comments in the descriptions, and love to hear your thoughts. Thank you. Have a terrific day.